Hi, gang. My name is Jay Breitlow, and I'm with Grand Welcome. And joining me is Jon. Jon's also with Grand Welcome. Hi, Jon.
How's it going, Jay?
So I'm in Orlando, and Jon is in. Are you right in Denver, or are you outside Denver?
Pretty much right in Denver, right
Okay.
south of downtown.
So when I first came on to Grand Welcome, I signed on for a couple reasons. One is that allows me to bring mom and pop service to to homeowners, right? We are boots on the ground. My wife and I are the owners, and we can be present for people. My wife and I have owned short-term rentals. We were in long-term rentals. Uh, so being able to be local, but also have the support of somebody like Jon, and to have the support of somebody like him behind me for every decision that we make with data is massive. Now, we'll talk about Jon in just a moment. We're going to have some screens. You'll be okay sharing some screens, maybe without giving all the sauce away, but I want people to know where we're getting data from. So, what I rely on Jon for is I'm going to actually share my screen. So this is 6005 Broad Oak. This is in Solterra. This is this is about 45 minutes south of Orlando, 25 minutes or so to the parks. And so this is a property that a client came and they were shopping for a house in the $700,000 area. And you can pull us up on redfin.com. Really easy to look at what this is listing for, what it's sold for. And I said to Jon, it's like, I just need to understand properties a little bit more so that our clients can build out their pro forma. So what Jon does is he sends over this really great PDF, and you'll see on this PDF that it's got high season, low season. July is booming. Someone's probably writing a check here in September. Um, and so this isn't about being profitable every month. This is about being profitable and predictable. And what Jon does to get this, and we also send our clients this as well, is he creates this really nice Excel spreadsheet. And in each month, January through December, he's giving what the occupancy is, how many paid nights historically are there, ADR, right? That's how much they're collecting per night. And then you get a rent projection, average, and a high and a low. So what this does is you can come underneath here and you can start to build out your pro forma. The really nice thing that we like for realtors, by the way, is having this at open houses. We have a lot of realtors who have buyers, and we send this to them right away. Um, Now, it's definitely not done right away, and the reason why it's not done right away is I'll kick this back to Jon here. So the thing the question that I get all the time, right? I wanted to share like what the data looks like, how you build it out with the Excel spreadsheet and then the pretty PDF. But then the question I get all the time is, how do you get this data? Why is your data reliable? And all I say is, look, I know that Jon takes like 4 or 5 different sources and he pulls data together. And with this data, it's more comprehensive than anything else that's out there. And we're seeing this also in the forums. I promise to let Jon talk. We're seeing the forums, people saying Orlando's not profitable because the prices are escalating so much. And they're right. Like in many of these houses, and I think we should talk about the Cuban Palms one also, which was the 5 and 6, if you remember that. Like our client pulled out of that because of your data after like he'd submitted his contract. So he pulled out because your data was so great. So Jon, with how do you do this? Like where does this data come from? Why do I not believe AirDNA? Why do I not believe blanket statements about this is about what you can expect this area to do?
Yeah, I mean, where I usually start, um, like you said, I use multiple sources. I use, sources like the ones you were just talking about, but we also use hard data source. The main and probably the main checker in all of these is going to be, key data, which for people who are in the hospitality industry probably have heard of if they don't use. It's a system that uses that actually connects to property management PMSs directly. It's not like a scrape data source. It's not like going in and doing shops of Airbnb and Verbo. It's like actually connecting into a PMS for anyone who signs up for it and pays for it. You know, we get that data from other property managers in these areas. which serves as a good check and balance for then using, live shopping, live, data scraping. So we can data scrape, like Price Labs. We use Price Labs pretty heavily,
Can,
which is,
can you screen share the Price Labs
yeah,
while you're talking? Because that was helpful for me to see what Price Labs looks like. Now, Price Labs is something that anybody can get, which is why you're sharing it.
Price Labs, anyone who has any, from an individual standpoint, if you have one listing, you can use Price Labs. If you have, if you're a property manager like we are, we use them pretty heavily. So this is one of like the main data scraping, rate shopping tools that I'll use to get, what do rates look like for the next 365 days, and what do they look like for the last 365 days. Where did we go? Where did we, what was booked and what was the rates looking like last year, and what do they look like for the next year? Um, and then I use that plus their occupancy. I look at their occupancy, but then that's the major one I check. I always want to check to make sure that their occupancy isn't inflated versus what actual companies in the area are doing for a particular unit. One thing that these types of tools are great, but one thing they can't always distinguish is what's a paid guest and what's not a paid guest. What was booked through their system and what was a paid night versus what was an owner night versus what was maybe a block. Um, in the system. So that's why the occupancy in these, while it's great for trends, it's good to tell you what months are busy, what months are their slow months. It's not always the go-to for occupancy. It's great for rates because it gives you what the market kind of finished at and is looking at for the next and last 365 days. But then that's when we pull in the hard data, the hard occupancy numbers from sources like Key Data, and our own as well. We operate in a lot of markets. As we develop in Orlando more, we'll have more hard data for Orlando of our own to use. That's how we start the formulation of, okay, we're starting, this is our normal occupancy for this area, this is the normal rates for this area, and then we start to kind of put together the month by month, the occupancy by month, the rate by month, um, and kind of formulate that Excel sheet that we send out to you guys.
So, if you want to turn off your screen, it's flashing weird too. I don't know why it's probably just taxing the the system. So, what I heard you say. So, people, I see again these forms all the time. They say just hey, check AirDNA, but what you're saying is that AirDNA is not reliable. It's reliable to a certain point, but I would not use it to make a hard decision on if a property is going to cash flow or not.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that AirDNA is not reliable. I don't want to say anything bad about their software and their service. I think what they do is pretty great, and it's very similar to Price Labs. I mean, it's very similar. They both sort of do the same thing. But the one thing that I'll want to get make clear about those types of data scraping services is that they're doing data scrapes. They're not getting hard data. They have a hard time and usually can't tell the difference between what's a paid reservation and then what's an owner stay versus what a block. If you go into your your Airbnb listing and you block off a month, right? You're going to stay there for that month or you're staying there for that week. They have a hard time distinguishing. They can't really tell if that is an owner stay or a guest stay. So they're kind of counting it as a guest stay. So they're giving you that week or month of occupancy.
So I appreciate your backing off of what I said, but that to me it is like a big deal. If you cannot accurately tell what the percentage occupancy, if it's rented versus owner stay, to me that is a big concern. It's a big red flag. And you and I have also had some conversation on some of the AI sites that are out there. And what I'll do is I'll go out to some of those AI sites. Some are free, some are paid for. Price Labs is probably the best one for kick the tires test. Agreed.
Which one?
The Price Labs.
Oh yeah, I mean, Price Labs is great. It's like I said, it's what we use. So I mean, but again, it's using that same sort of AI and same sort of it's applying sort of the same logic as a lot of these are. Price Labs is a little bit more. They're a little bit more invested than some of like these free ones, some of like these like new ones that are popping up because they've been around a lot longer. They have lots of clients now, so they're investing lots of money to be better at it. Does that make sense?
It does, and I just want to underscore that you wouldn't make your decision based on that. That can't be the only
It
source
wouldn't
of
be
data.
the. It's definitely not going to be my end all be all for making a decision of what the rate or what the projection should be.
And what we're doing is we're not going to show you the other sources that John uses for primarily because like he can't. Like John has some proprietary software that he uses, stuff that's in a system that is like Grand Welcome created. Um, but he does use data from other places in addition to Price Labs and AirDNA. I think 4 or 5 different sources, something like that, right, John? Kind of depending on your area.
Yeah, I mean, we have a multitude of different software sources we'll use, and then just good old fashioned. Sometimes we'll get in there and just do some manual rates or shops ourselves for some trickier ones or some bigger, nicer ones in the area if we need to.
So the and this is what the short term shop talks about, the enemy method, where you just go up and you pull up Airbnb, and I'm going to do a screen share because you and I were just having a conversation about this just a moment ago, and let me actually get it brought up in the background, but the our conversation. Oh, I do have it up here. All right, screen share coming eventually. But my conversation with you was really clear. I want to do this to our house, and how profitable is it? So this is a 5 bedroom, 5.5 in Solterra, and so that 6,005 broad is also in Solterra. So when this came up, and we saw this on Airbnb this week, we thought, man, this is great. We've got to do this. Check out the game room, the slide, modern updates, Avengers on the ceiling. You've got Iron Man's hand in your game room, like because why not, right? Stark Industries was here, and so I said to John, I was like, man, like this, you know what? And I can even show you what I did and the dangers that this would do. Here, I'm showing a check-in on 418 for $1,000 a night, and so John can actually go back and he can see just how relevant this data is. When you go back, you see, geez, it's empty for all these dates. Like it's totally empty everywhere. All right, well, I'm just going to click through for June. What's the June rates? And we're probably we're still at $1,000 a night, $6,000 for an extended weekend. So what I did is I said I extrapolated this out. I said this is a cash cow. You can see that it's blocked out. And John was wise enough to say, well, hold the phone there, pal, because that's actually not what's happening.
Yeah, I mean we're looking at April there, which and I believe April 18th is around Easter weekend this year, right? I mean
Yep.
that's going to be probably if not their highest dollar week of the year for that particular unit. But I mean, you get into like a May weekend, June or July. I mean, July 4th is probably gonna be pretty busy, but you can't take like their highest dollar weekend and kind of apply that to every weekend or every week for the entire year. I mean, it's a good example of probably some dynamic pricing right there with that unit where they're charging more for the high dollar for the high occupancy, high demand times, and they're charging less for the slower times.
There's and just the casual shopper looking at that, like, wow, like that house must do 150 a year. I mean, I know that's what I thought. And when John goes back and looks at the data, he can actually see what the bookings were when they're blocked out, and they're not. I'm guessing that this property manager is not all blocked out because they're booked. It's blocked out because they're trying to spike demand in some of these times, and then they'll probably go back and open up some dates. Is my thought. Is that
Um, I don't know. I mean, I've never. I don't know if I've ever heard of that. I'm sure. I've never heard about it in the vacation rental segment anyway, as far as like individual vacation rentals. Um, as far as like hotel chains, they'll sometimes limit their availability on sites to kind of get like the only 5 rooms left type things. Book now, only 2
Yeah.
left, or book now, only 5 left. That's definitely a game that some of those chain hotels play, that I've seen over the years. I don't know about individual vacation rentals though.
But either way, what you the number you threw out, and this isn't a deep dive. He hasn't done the analysis on it, and he will. And I'll put it in the comments what John came up with for this for a revenue projection on this unit. But the number I heard you throw out was like 77 or 78,000 for the year based on the data you saw. So if you're
Mhm.
doing the enemy method, if you're doing price labs or just AirDNA and not getting a comprehensive look, because in this case you could do price slabs and you could do the enemy method and come up with that number kind of somewhere in between. But in this case, what we're looking at doing is how much money are we going to invest into 6005 Broad Oak to get the most value. The projection was 95K. Can we get it to 130K? Can we get it to 110K? So what John's going to do is he's going to go back, he's going to analyze some of these themed rooms to see what percentage, because there's a point that you're at break even, there's a point that you lost, and there's a point that you're doing really well. And so what we want to do is we want to understand that. Now this is an extreme case, and fortunately we've got John to do this for us, but not everybody's got it, John. So my offering to you is if you're out there shopping for your short-term rental, and you're not sure if you can make a pro forma work, just drop us a note and let me know if we can assist you. And we can do some ballpark AI tire kicking stuff to get a basic number to kind of get you started with making that offer and help with making that offer. And I'm not a realtor, by the way, nor are you. So this should not
Nope.
constitute any sort of real estate. But this is just real life things that John and I are talking about. Well,
Yeah.
John, you probably hear from me more than you want to. But this is just something that we want people to have. Can you speak to this other point also with dynamic pricing and what Grand Welcome does? I know that it helps a lot, but what I tell people is for what we do at Grand Welcome is we're 15%, and that's our property management. Because we have so much data behind us and our team works so well and seamlessly together with data, I like to tell people, give us the opportunity to find that 15% with the data that we have to really create these spikes in demands and really get the best return on your investment. So don't quote me as that, but it'd be fair to say, John, that we use this data on not just the front end but the back end.
Oh yeah. Orlando more than any other place, from working with you guys for the last few months now, has really put a spotlight on just how much of a difference dynamic pricing can really have in an area. Um, Price Labs, what we use, the tool we use, it has the ability to be able to not only scrape listings, but it can pull in and it gives us like it can tell us by the listing if this is a dynamically priced unit and on a level of like low, moderate to high level. So a high level dynamic pricing means that it's going to have like what we looked at earlier with that one unit,
Big
is
swing.
pretty high dynamically priced unit, and then all the way down to like the one-offs that are just owned by or ran by just one person who owns a house and wants to rent who may not have any dynamic pricing. One thing that I have really noticed is that when you filter out those non to low to moderate dynamically priced units and you look at just the high dynamically priced units, their occupancy is higher, the revenue and tends to be higher because they're fluctuating their prices to meet demand. They're pricing themselves competitively in the slow times to get the extra occupancy that a unit that's not dynamically priced isn't doing. So if they leave it the same price and it's a low demand and you have all these options of places, I don't know about you, or not everyone thinks the same way as like as I want the most. I'm not going to say the cheapest, but the most economically favorable at that time. Like if you have 1,000 choices, chances are you're going to go with one that looks good but is also reasonably priced, right? I mean, in a slow time, you're not going to pay an arm and a leg for something. You're not going to pay $1,000 for the same unit that may be listed for $500. You're going to pay the $500 if there's a huge amount of demand and it's the same star rating, everything. So people who are dynamically pricing like that, are making more money, and vice versa. In the high demand times when units are scarce and they're running out of units, they know to raise their rates to get more money for them because there isn't a lot of units left. So they know they can get more because people are going to pay more because they want that vacation. They want to come stay that week. And if there's only a dozen units left, you're going to kind of be able to not necessarily name your own price, but you're going to be able to get a high dollar amount for it. So I've definitely noticed that a lot, especially with Orlando, diving into it even more these past few months, is that units that I take that are dynamically priced at a higher level are doing much better and are giving much better results than units that are priced with none to low dynamic pricing.
John, I appreciate your time today. I know we talked way more probably than we intended, but this always
No
happens.
worries.
I get on and we start talking data. It's just so important to know your data, know your pro forma. Not every property is going to be in the green. It's just not, and it's a product of supply and demand. People are looking from all over the world. I've got a client from Japan and China and Canada just in the last 2 days, and they're looking. People from right across the street here are looking. They're all looking at the same house. California, Denver. They're all. I mean, they're all looking at Orlando. So don't get stuck in a price war. Don't just get stuck bidding just to bid. Reach out to us and let us help you navigate some of these waters. John, thanks for your time, bud.
No problem. Pleasure.